f4.
This opening, named after the well-known English player from the 19th century, is an attempt to play a Dutch setup with white.
e5.
This, the from gambit, is a radical attempt to counter white's opening plan.
e4. E takes f4. Knight f3. d6.
The defense developed by Fischer.
d4. g5. h4. g4. Knight g1. f5. Bishop takes f4.
Is well answered by
F takes e4. Knight c3. Knight f6. Knight c3. Knight f6. Bishop takes f4. F takes e4. d5.
is weaker in view of
Bishop g7. h5. Short castle. h6. Bishop h8. Queen d2. Queen e8.
when white experiences some difficulties.
Queen d2. d5.
More promising is
Knight b5. Knight a6.
with chances for both sides.
Bishop e5. c6. Knight g e2. Bishop e6.
And black has retained his extra pawn with a sound enough position. Hector Lecco, Copenhagen 1995.
F takes e5.
Even the great Capablanca did not risk accepting the gambit pawn against the allies Molina and Ruiz, Buenos Aires 1914, but preferred here too. e4, transposing into the king's gambit. Since such a decision on the part of white is perfectly possible, we outline a plan for black.
d6. Knight f3. D takes e5. e4. Knight c6. Bishop c5. Bishop c4. Knight f6. Queen e2.
Bellin Watson, England 1985, and here
Short castle.
would have given approximate equality.
E takes d6.
White can decline the gambit, but this does not promise any advantage.
Bishop takes d6. g3.
Is bad on account of
h5.
with an attack for black.
Knight f3.
The from gambit leads to a sharp tactical battle with wild complications. For the pawn, black has a lead in development and chances of an attack on the opponent's slightly weakened kingside.
g5.
This move, in the spirit of the ancient openings, was devised by the young Emanuel Lasker, and is undoubtedly black's most energetic plan. Little is promised by
d4. g4. Knight g5. f5. e4. f4. h6. e5. Bishop e7. Knight h3. G takes h3. Queen h5. Check. King f8. bishop c4, rook h7, queen g6, bishop b4, check.
An important intermezzo, the bishop moves off the d8-h4 diagonal and vacates it for the queen. If now and
King e2,
can be followed with
rook g7, bishop takes h6, knight takes h6, queen takes h6, queen g5,
favors black.
c3, rook g7,
And
bishop takes h6,
without the bishop check at b4, this line would favor white, as bad in view of
queen h4, check. Knight e5,
doesn't give white any advantage, because after
bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d1, check, king takes d1, knight c6, knight c3, bishop e6, bishop f4, long castle, check, king e1, knight g e7, e3, knight g6,
and black regains the pawn with a good game.
g3, g4, knight h4,
The alternative is
knight c6, d3, f5,
with a sharp game.
knight e7, d4, knight g6,
One of black's main ideas is that after the opening of the h-file his rook comes actively into play.
knight g2,
Obliges white to go over to passive defense.
h5, e4, h4, e5, h takes g3, e takes d6, queen takes d6, queen e2, check, bishop e6, d5, rook takes h2, d takes e6, knight e5,
Is also possible.
knight c6, e3,
Is met by the standard attack.
h5, bishop d3, h4, bishop takes g6, f takes g6, knight takes h4, rook takes h4, g takes h4, queen takes h4, check, king d2, bishop f5,
And it is hard to offer white any good advice.
c3, h5, e4, h4, e5, h takes g3, e takes d6, queen takes d6, bishop d3, g takes h2, queen e2, check, king f8, bishop takes g6, queen takes g6, d5, bishop f5, d takes c6, rook e8,
Spadero Leaners, Core, 1975.
Knight takes g6, h takes g6, queen d3, knight c6.
Black is playing for the rapid development of his queenside, at the same time forcing white to spend a tempo on the defense of his d4 pawn. The threat is Kuda pukul d4 Gaja pukul g3 sekik.
c3, bishop f5, e4, queen e7, bishop g2, long castle.
The critical position of the opening. Black has a lead in development and strong pressure for the pawn. White must be careful not to end up in a critical position. Thus, after
Bishop f4, bishop takes f4, g takes f4, rook h3,
or
bishop takes h3, bishop takes e4, bishop takes g4, check, f5, queen e2, queen h4, check, king d1, rook e8, d5, knight d8.
White soon capitulated in Pishner-Tarakanov Core, 1994. Playing the king to the queenside also does not solve White's problems.
King d1, bishop e6, king c2.
Toporov Chetverik, St. Petersburg 2000, and here.
Bishop c5.
Would have given Black the initiative. Pleister's recommendation of
Bishop e3.
looks stronger, with a sharp game.
Short castle. Knight e5. Queen d1. Knight f3. Check. Bishop takes f3. G takes f3. E takes f5. Rook takes h2.
Left White in difficulties in Antoshin Panchenko, USSR 1983.